Despite a groundswell of interest in recycling right now, with the growing environmental movement, recycling is not a new phenomenon and has a long history within art and design. Since the Dada movement of the early 20th century, artists and designers have reappropriated found objects, not only for the sake of efficiency, but also as a way of commenting on consumer culture, industrial production, and the meaning of art. Reclaiming Design will investigate this topic by speaking with three groundbreaking designers who have made a name for themselves working with reclaimed materials.
Bart had a shop out in Brooklyn, and one day he came up to me and he's like, how can we address this issue of scrap that's just sort of becoming this mountain in the shop? And there's so much of this going into our landfills. We started thinking about, well, let's invite our friends to create a piece from the scrap. Let's see what can be created from it. Unfortunately, we sort of ran away with the project and forgot to invite everybody. But some great things really came out that night that we didn't sleep, and we just sort of worked on these two original benches and proved to ourselves that this material is usable and it can be used in a creative manner. Within the Brooklyn area, there's just an obscene amount of wood shops that create a lot of waste. So what we do is we go around and we collect this material. It's very important for us to just keep all this material, whether it's ply or domestic or tropical. So generally what we do is we'll go in and we'll dumpster dive in most people's wood shops. We go to big industry like Steinway & Sons, to other big mill shops that throw out maybe like 65 cubic yards of this material a day. We bring it back to the shop and we clean it to specific dimensions that allows us to work within the format of Scrapile. So it's a little more efficient.
Droog has become a kind of iconical thing for green design, but for me it was more a system how the memory works. Like Socrates had this philosophy of training your brain to remember things. So you take a house, and in this house you put in different spots a kind of memory, so you can recollect this memory in an instant. The rack chair and the milk bottle lamp. The story about this was more how to create your own paradise, like Robinson Crusoe, who was stranded on this island, and he had to rethink everything again. The issue was more from how can I make my own paradise with what's already available, and that's the way these products were conceived.
This is a magazine table or coffee table made out of recycled paper. It's using an existing recycled paper building product, which is used in construction, and laminating it together to create a piece of furniture out of it that hopefully has a little poetic quality to the fact that you're adding new paper products to complete this form that shows this cycle of the material. The next project is basically a client who had a very strong environmental criteria for their renovation, also had a very strong aesthetic requirement, which was to get rid of a lot of the existing space. So after looking into what we could do to offset this destruction of the space and throwing the stuff away, it kind of seemed foolish to throw the stuff away and bring something new into the space. So with their blessing, we basically built walls out of the scrap from the initial configuration of the space. So this is just sheetrock walls that were cut into strips and stacked.
We've largely been talking about products so far, and obviously I come in more from the architectural perspective. And I think what's interesting across the board is that by sort of reclaiming materials, it's taking something essentially which has lost its function and giving it a new function. And it's happening, I think it's in, the scales are in architecture and in product design too. You're looking at something like a drawer, or you're looking at something like a scrap of wood. I think Tom Dixon was here yesterday and showed the Artec Pavilion, and it's in post-industrial waste. It's a material made out of the sort of trimmed bits of the sticky parts of envelopes. But it's developed into material, and there you're only aware of the history if you have the press kit and you know the information about the company that's making this material. And I think that that's, in a way, where this can go in a positive direction, because I don't necessarily think that people want to have houses with sort of bits and pieces, but if you can sort of disguise those things, it can be quite elegant. But I think actually what's interesting is seeing both. A lot of this is happening on a boutique level, but then something like adaptive reuse, sort of, you can have something like the Musée d'Orsay in itself is reclaiming design. Here's an old train station, let's turn it into a museum. That's a huge project. So I think that it's interesting, sort of, from the very micro to the macro, this is happening across the board.
Pretty much any time you're using either found objects or reclaimed, recycled materials and objects, I think a lot of people tend to associate that with do-it-yourself DIY projects. How do you position your products within what is considered an art or luxury market when a lot of people see these things and think that it's something that they could do? Or do you think that part of your role as a designer is helping consumers be more inventive and making their own creations?
For me, it was that people could make it their own. So when they are making it their own, it's good by me. That was my intention. But yeah, they got this this world of art and of design, and they take it on, and it becomes an item for rich people to buy. It gives more how crazy this market is.
I think one thing that was interesting is that his piece was probably seen by millions of people in magazines and museums that could say, oh, I want to do that again, but the person that buys it doesn't have the time or ability to do that, and they experience it on their level, but a lot of us can just sort of take that idea with us to the next place.
For Carlos's work and mine, there's a lot of labor that goes into transforming it. So, even if the material's free, the time it took to produce that same object is way more than going to Home Depot.
It's a project where you don't really see the amount of labor that goes into Scrapile. I mean, there's a lot of collecting and cutting and sanding and this and that. And I would encourage anybody to pick up scrap and build their own pieces. There's a million ways to use it.
You dare anybody.
I dare you. In fact, I encourage you to build it and I'll buy it from you.
Large parts of the world are trying to get up to our level of development and also want to copy our way of consumption. So this way of consuming goods is really an ideal way for anyone.
I think you make a really good point there about trying to encourage a positive connotation of recycling, because I think that in different cultures and different points in time, there have been different sorts of connotations of what recycling means. For quite a while, when I used to buy vintage recycled clothes, my parents were very, very upset because to them it connoted, I don't know, being poor or something that really bothered them. And I think throughout the world in a lot of places, there's this issue where sometimes recycling is seen as something that people don't want to do, or that makes them seem like they're desperate or they're poor, they have no other options. So I think it's important work like this really encourages seeing the kind of seeing recycling and reclaiming materials as something that is desirable. There is no perfect green solution. It's just about trying to do things better rather than just thinking about the aesthetics and the form.
The aesthetics and the form help to move us on and make it something that's digestible across the board for the outside of the design window, as he was saying. Because I think we're having this discussion, but you need to look at the larger picture, and if you can advance the sort of window of form and design, then it kind of broadens the appeal.